I've been in the hydraulic fracturing business for about the last 10 years or so. And actually last night I wasn't able to preview this because I was on an Eagle Ford frac location. And so it's been a long night driving in from San Antonio. What I want to talk to you today is really provide you a quiz and details and the truths from not just our perspective, but from the truths and realities for unconventional development. There's a lot of debates occurring in the marketplace, in the political sector, and there's a lot of falsities and outright untruths that are out there in a daily basis. Halliburton is out there. We are doing everything that we can, and I want to provide you an outlook and some aspects of the truths of unconventional development. Really, before we do that, I want to display to everybody that's here in the room really what unconventional resources are, and first of all, what their definition is. Unconventional resources primarily compose of three reservoir types. One is tight gas. These are found and have been developed in North America landscape for the last 2 decades. They're formations like the Piceance Basins in the Rocky Mountains, or formations like the Anadarko Basin in western Oklahoma. These have been developed for many, many years. Coal bed methane is another type of unconventional resource. Powder River Basin, and this is shown in blue on the screen, are all the known coal bed methane reservoirs located globally. Powder River Basin is one of the most prolific coal bed methane reservoirs developed. Being able to take that knowledge and export it is something that we're interested in. And then, of course, there's the shale reservoirs. Shale reservoirs here are shown in red. We've identified commercially viable shale reservoirs in 63 countries globally. Fundamentally, we operate as a company in 80. We would bet that in all 80 of those countries that we operate, there will be an organic rich shale that will be developed, whether it's an oil shale or a natural gas shale, primarily because they're the source rocks for the conventional oil and gas that's been produced since really the 1910s. It's very, very interesting. Energy or the unconventional resource has become a major percentage of North American production. 58% of all natural gas produced today comes from these three unconventional resource bases. 58% of the natural gas published or produced today. So really I want to start this presentation off with a quiz. And basically here's the caveat. If anybody gets all of these correct, then you can come and talk to me about a frac date. All right. So, the first aspect of this, each and every one of these unconventional resources will have to be hydraulically fractured. That is an absolutely true statement. The API suggests that 95% of unconventional resources will have to be fractured. I would venture to say that it is 100%. Every single one of these wells must be hydraulically fractured to become economically and commercially viable. It's a fact of the physics of the reservoirs themselves, and it can't be changed. So, that's just a bold statement. The individuals that would seek to regulate or limit or to offset or to prohibit the use of hydraulic fracturing as a science and a technology, if they were successful, this is what they would see in the next 3 years. They would see a 45% decrease in the natural gas production. They would also see a 17% decrease in the oil production in the United States of America. And to David's point, where would 17% of America's oil production be replaced from? It could come from the Keystone Pipeline. It could also come from Iran or Venezuela or Libya. And so it's a replacement barrel issue. Tremendous amount of positive things have come from hydraulic fracturing, which the first commercial hydraulic fracture was done in 1949 in Velma, Oklahoma, south of Oklahoma City. Halliburton did that. We've been in that business since that time. I'll quote here the Democratic governor from Montana. I'm going to read this closely because, generally speaking, I like to quote politicians very, very closely. But he said, unless people are willing to park their cars, move into a cave, live naked, and eat nuts, we are going to continue to produce energy, and that energy needs to be moved to the source of consumption. And that's the key point. The production of oil and gas must move close to consumption, meeting that supply and demand, reducing the transportation costs and removing the barriers and political attributes. I'm going to show you a little bit of really what Halliburton's doing in the next few slides. So this statement here, unconventional wells are being developed in an environmentally friendly way. This is a true statement, and let me provide some facts around this aspect. There have been zero documented cases where hydraulic fracturing has influenced a water table. There's been a little over 44,000 wells hydraulically fractured in the United States, and not one documented case where hydraulic fracturing, that wellbore, has influenced the water table. The fact is, and as David alluded, we are working thousands of feet below aquifers that are used for residential usage, for agricultural usage. There's little impact. Our surface footprint is also very, very small. In the western half of the United States, where a lot of oil and gas comes from public lands, we operate on less than 1/10% of the lands, of the public lands in the United States. But we're not going to be naive, and I'm certainly not naive. We have a major, major perception issue in the public forum. And we are also an industry that is not faultless in any way, shape, or form. We have caused massive surface contamination and spills when equipment has failed and when processes were not followed. We are not faultless. We are not perfect as an industry. But I'll also mention that no industry anywhere is perfect. But we do strive for it every day as an industry. There's also a major issue around fracturing chemicals. And it's very, very much a hot button issue. But less than 1% of of the fracturing fluids are chemicals themselves. Less than 1%. The rest of it is water and sand. But we're not really just sitting around. What we're doing as Halliburton, and this goes a long way to many other aspects of the industry are doing this. The fluid system that I show you right here is the first available and commercial fluid system used for hydraulic fracturing, where all the constituents, the entire makeup of the fluid, every single aspect of the fluid was sourced from your refrigerator. The materials come from your ice cream, they come from beer, they are completely benign, they meet all aspects of the Food and Drug regulations, and we actually pumped this last week in the Eagle Ford Shale. The aspect is that it's not that this doesn't come with a cost. It comes with an increased cost to the operators. But the industry is moving in the direction of benignness, if I'll call it that. The next question, or the next statement, is that drilling unconventional wells are using up all of our fresh water. And I just want to put into some aspects. The industry of hydraulic fracturing today uses the water equivalent. We use the equivalent in one day, the equivalent to what New York City uses in 12 hours. The entire industry of hydraulic fracturing uses the same amount of water as New York City in 12 hours. We use, in one day, we use the same, or that amount of water irrigates less than 1% of the United States corn crop for one day. It amounts for about 20% of the golf course watering for one day. Some other aspects, or a different way to think about this and put things in relativity, is to think about we're creating and we're making millions of BTUs. Natural gas is traded on a BTU equivalent basis. So let's talk about alternative energies and their consumption of water. So for shale gas development, for every million BTUs that's produced, we use 2.3 gallons of water. That's what we use. For coal, it's 5 gallons of water. For nuclear, it's 11 gallons of water. For biofuels, it's 2,500 gallons of water that's used to create 1 million BTU of natural gas. Shale gas uses 2.3. Hydraulic fracturing brings affordable energy to the market with relatively speaking, low water use. But it's also an area of high emotional discussion, significant emotional discussion. So we're attacking it as an industry in three ways. The first is through technology. The second is by utilizing non-potable water, brackish waters found below the freshwater aquifers to be used where there's no demand for that water today. And the third is through recycling. In the effort of cost, if anyone wants to discuss those, I'll be available after this. Let's see here. The next question is, unconventional resources are a major part of the global solution. This is absolutely true. But 10 years ago, this was false. 5 years ago, this was completely and utterly indifferent. Couldn't go either way on this. Today, it's absolutely a true statement. 53, and I think I misspoke earlier, 53% of the U.S. Gas production comes from unconventionals. 28% comes from tight gas, 8% from coal bed methane, and for shale gas, it was 1% 10 years ago. Today, it's 17%. The unconventional liquids, the reservoirs such as the Bakken Shale and the Eagle Ford that are just in their infancy, they represent 7% of United States crude oil production. And it will dramatically increase over the next 5 years, subject to constraints such as the reason why President Obama was in Cushing, Oklahoma, which was to sign into order an executive aspect of increasing pipeline capacity and throughput through Cushing, Oklahoma, because Cushing is now the largest bottleneck for crude oil movement in the United States of America. But unconventionals are in the highlights every single day. China's gas demand is up 22%. Germany plans to disband nuclear by 2022. And the EPA is putting substantial regulations on the coal markets, all laying the groundwork for increased natural gas demand. You know, this is a reference of the global gas markets themselves. The United States has 25% of the gas reserves, 15% of the shale reserves as located in published areas. It has over 75% of the horsepower available to hydraulically frack these reservoirs that's available in the global marketplace. The rest of the world is starting to know and understand that the demand for this equipment and the demand for the equipment that Halliburton provides. They're asking us to build new equipment. They're asking us to mobilize that equipment that's built in the United States of America and move it externally. We need low energy prices so that we can create and build and manufacture this equipment and we can export it to these developing areas. This is always surprising. This is a function of lack of capital investment internationally. This has a lot of attributes around available markets, tight gas markets, pipeline transport, and also political risk that's in the international sector. This statement, all unconventional resources are different. This is a true statement. There's a lot of reasons for this. First and foremost, geology, available markets and infrastructures, and then of course the technology needed to access it. I'll give you 3 examples of attributes where this statement is true. One is in the Paris Basin. Paris Basin, some of the best geology is underneath Paris, France. There's a little bit of an attribute with the political environment inside of France that will prohibit the development of unconventional resources. But it is probably the world's best unconventional shale gas play. So the second is the Floyd Shale that's located in Mississippi. Now the market and the technology is there to make this feasible. But the problem is that the geology is basically just kind of okay. So Mississippi is they're just gonna miss out. And that's a function of geology. The third part is natural gas liquids in areas like the Marcellus Shale. There's a lot of natural gas liquids in the Marcellus Shale that could really help out that play. But the problem isn't that the geology isn't there, it's there. It's not that the technology isn't there, the technology is there. But the aspect of it is that the insufficient infrastructure to take those liquids to market represents a barrier to its development. That barrier will be overcome in times given a free and open marketplace. So let's move that to this question, which is, are all unconventional resources alike? And the answer to this question is true. So this seems very opposite to the last slide. Same statement, one's false, one's true. And you may think I'm crazy, but what we're not talking about the technology aspect here. We're talking about, if you look at a hydraulic fracture location today, whether you're talking the Eagle Ford or the Bakken or Poland, they look the same. The wellbores, for all intents and purposes, are the same. The process that we're talking about inside of Halliburton is called an intellectual storehouse. An intellectual storehouse consists of the continued accumulation of experience, of knowledge, trials and error, successes and failures. The scientific breakthroughs that have been gained over decades of performing hydraulic fractures. Capturing those and then exchanging a knowledge transfer. So let's use shale development as an example. This slide shows that for 15 years it took to develop the Barnett Shale in the Fort Worth Basin. There was a lot of trial and error. Started with vertical wells and went to horizontal wells. We used crosslink gel technology, then fresh water. Did acid treatments. We fracked with hydrocarbon. Then we took those experiences, once that code was cracked, and we took it to the next developing place, the Woodfords and the Marcelluses and the Haynesvilles. And the learning curve was reduced dramatically. When we look at formations such as the Eagle Ford Shale, it went from exploration to discovery to development in about 11 months. Today there's 256 drilling rigs operating in the Eagle Ford Shale. It's the most robust play on the market, and I'll put that up against the Bakken any day. It's a fabulous play with available markets, loads of technology, in a friendly state regulatory environment. And it's dramatic what something can do. I had a discussion recently with a CEO of an NOC, and this was his statement. He said that he views the United States as the unconventional resource university, and that, in this case, the Rocky Mountains were their professor. Tremendous amount of private equity capital is coming into this market. When you look at who is bought into the U.S. shale plays, Statoil, Petrobras, Total, Reliance, Petronas, CNOOC, the list goes on and on and on. They're here for a specific purpose. One, to make money, and two, to tap into this intellectual storehouse, to take all the information home with them. And why? Because all unconventional resources are alike. They can be attacked from a similar perspective. I'm not going to sit here and say whether this is good or bad. This is a market opportunity for both operators and service companies alike. There is a lack of human resources in the technical marketplace, not only in North America, but globally as well. And it's a resource that's able to be exported for the benefit of this area. Really, I want to thank everybody for the opportunity to come here today. It really does complete the quiz. So if you got them all right, come and see me. Frac dates tend to be hard to come by, but we could probably make that happen. I've given you some facts today. Come and talk to me again if you want to discuss any further. The oil and gas industry, and specifically the hydraulic fracturing industry, it is a fabulous and great industry. It has a great future, and it has a greater opportunity to collectively bring clean and cheaper energy to this world. The unconventional resources simply can and will develop. They can and will provide environmentally friendly ways by working together between operators, regulatory bodies, and service companies without sacrificing economies such as the United States economy. With that, thank you.